So here's what's been catching my eye lately. Even while everyone's freaking out about these market dumps, ETF action, particularly around Ethereum. And trust me, there's a reason I'm laser focused on this. These Ethereum ETFs are basically giving us a sneak peek of what happens when this market really gets cooking. The way I see it, Ethereum ETFs are absolutely killing it because Ethereum's been on this crazy tear. We're getting bombarded with solid news. And then you've got Tom Lee going full beast mode, scooping up ETH like it's going out of style. That's putting Ethereum front and center in ways we haven't seen before. But here's where it gets interesting. This whole market meltdown has everyone running for the hills. The doom and gloom crew is out in full force, screaming that we're done. Finished, game over for crypto. But when I step back and really look at what's brewing beneath the surface, man, it feels like we're standing on the beach watching that water pull way, way back. You know what I'm talking about. That eerie calm right before the ocean comes roaring back with everything it's got. Remember that last wave back in 2020, 2021? We're talking November into December 2020 here. When that thing finally crashed down, it absolutely demolished altcoins. I mean, just wiped them off the map. Everyone suddenly became laser focused on just Bitcoin and Ethereum, like nothing else even existed. And guess what? We're seeing the exact same playbook right now. Everyone's got tunnel vision for Ethereum, completely sleeping on altcoins. And honestly, I think that's a massive blind spot people are creating for themselves. All we keep hearing is this broken record: Ethereum, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin. The ETFs, all the market buzz, everything's putting these two in the spotlight while altcoins are sitting in the shadows. But here's the thing. I've been saying we're still just getting warmed up here. We're in what I'd call phase 2, with phases 3 and 4 still coming down the pipeline. Now look, I'm not saying this cycle is going to be a carbon copy of what we've seen before. Way too much has shifted for that to be realistic, and we'd be foolish to ignore those changes. But the liquidity cycle, yeah, I still think we're riding that wave, which means we've got some seriously good months ahead of us for crypto, especially for altcoin price action. That's exactly where my attention is right now. When I dive into Ethereum's market dynamics right now, the ETF demand has been absolutely wild to witness. Sure, the price action across everything looks pretty rough thanks to this recent sell-off, but here's what's blowing my mind. Ethereum is sitting just a stone's throw away from its all-time highs, even after getting hammered. That's screaming one thing to me. We need to keep our eyes glued to Ethereum right now, waiting for that monster breakout. Because the moment, and I mean the exact second, we get that explosive move, it's going to trigger an absolute altcoin feeding frenzy, just like we've seen play out before. And speaking of Wall Street, holy cow, these ETFs have been crushing it. Get this, Wall Street just casually threw $40 billion at crypto ETFs like it's pocket change. Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs straight up shattered records with $40 billion in weekly volume. Ethereum alone pulled in $17 billion of that action, with Bitcoin scooping up the rest. The suits have officially caught the crypto bug big time. It's like crypto was the nerdy kid who suddenly got jacked over summer break, and now Wall Street's desperately trying to get invited to the cool kids table. You know what's really exciting to me? The sheer amount of money pouring into these ETFs right now. We're talking $40 billion here, people. And get this, $17 billion of that is going straight into Ethereum. That's huge. It's basically Wall Street screaming, "We want more Ethereum," at the top of their lungs. And honestly, this is just the beginning. Things are going to get even hotter this year. So if you're feeling a bit nervous or worried right now, here's what I want you to remember. The appetite for Ethereum and crypto in general is still absolutely massive. The demand hasn't gone anywhere. Oh, and here's another juicy bit from Crypto's R Us and Justin. Citigroup, yeah, that trillion-dollar asset manager, is apparently thinking about jumping into custody and payment services for stablecoins and crypto ETFs. Plus, they're speaking at the Ripple Swell 2025 conference right alongside BlackRock, BNY, and Franklin Templeton. Big things are coming, folks. And here's what absolutely blows my mind about this whole Ripple Swell thing. I've been saying for ages that Ripple Swell is basically a banking conference, right? But don't just take my word for it. Even David Schwartz has talked about how Ripple, this blockchain company, was literally one of the first to throw a banking conference focused on crypto. I mean, think about how wild that is. A blockchain company hosting a banking conference called Ripple Swell. And we're not talking about something recent here. The very first Ripple Swell happened back in 2016, if I remember correctly. So Ripple has been playing this long game with institutional players for almost a decade now. They'd been in the trenches with the big banks since way before it was cool. That's the kind of forward thinking that really matters. And honestly, it's something we should all be paying attention to. Now, are XRP ETFs the next big thing on deck? Look, we've been talking about this forever, right? We've been all over it. And boom, here comes CNBC dropping this bombshell. Expect a ton of crypto ETFs to hit the market in the next 2 months, including XRP and HBAR ETFs. Pay attention to this, people. Big thanks to Smoke Dog for catching this one. 2 months from now, that puts us right around October, which, and here's the beautiful part, lines up perfectly with all those SEC ETF decision deadlines we've been tracking. But wait, there's more.
Speaking of crypto, Nate, similar to the push to market we're seeing in IPOs, you're seeing a lot of what you call a boatload of crypto ETF filings. What does that mean, and how does that differ from what we've seen in the past?
Well, it's interesting because the three major stock exchanges, so NYSE, NASDAQ, and CBOE, they have all filed with the SEC for generic listing standards for crypto ETFs, which basically means that the exchanges wouldn't need to seek specific approval for each spot crypto ETF as long as it meets certain criteria. So this would streamline the approval process. And that's important because right now there are filings out there from multiple issuers for XRP ETFs, Solana ETFs, Cardano, HBAR. We could go on down the list, but there are a boatload of filings out there. And the expectation is that this standardized crypto framework will be implemented, say, in the next 2 months or so. And so if and when that happens, I think you're going to see the floodgates open. We're going to see a wave of approvals, and you're going to see, again, a boatload of new crypto ETFs coming to market.
Totally with Nate on this one. The timing just makes perfect sense when you look at the big picture, especially with altcoins finally starting to wake up and that Fed rate cut coming through. Honestly, it feels like crypto's just sitting there ready to absolutely explode come September and October. These next couple months, prime time for the market to keep climbing. We've been on this incredible bull run since April, 4 solid months of just grinding higher, especially with altcoins, while Bitcoin's been steadily breaking out from those lows all the way up to 124K. Bitcoin's been crushing it, and don't even get me started on Ethereum. We're talking near all-time highs here. Can't argue with those numbers. But here's where it gets really interesting. We've got this XRP ETF situation brewing, and I'm betting we'll see a bunch of altcoins launching their ETFs in September or October. The timing's lining up everywhere you look. Props to Digital Asset Investor for catching this. They had Stephen McClurg on, who's the CEO of Canary Funds. These guys actually filed for an XRP ETF too, so they know what they're talking about.
Now you're the CEO of the investment firm Canary Capital, and so wondering, you have all these applications now with the SEC for spot crypto ETFs tied to altcoins, including XRP and Litecoin. So I know you can't talk about these specific filings, but what do you think happens with those filings in general, with those spot crypto ETFs tied to altcoins?
Well, the SEC has been working very closely with the exchanges, NASDAQ, CBOE, New York Stock Exchange, over the last 6 months to create a generic listing standard. And that got published in the last week. So what the generic listing standard will do is give at least some standards so that you don't have to go through an entire process like we did with Bitcoin with other cryptocurrencies. That generic listing standard largely looks at futures. And does this token have a futures market in the US or not? And that's one of the qualifications. There's several other qualifications that also apply to other commodities. But if you look at what's proposed and what's public, it's still in the 21-day comment period. But once that's over, we do expect to see a lot of altcoins launching probably in September, October.
So, yeah, I mean, again, this timeline is perfect for altcoins. I feel like this is kind of, right around the same exact time that currently the SEC is working on a framework for ETF filings. So it kind of makes sense that this would be in place in the next 2 months at least. And that way we can kind of streamline a lot of these ETF applications. XRP, I would say, is kind of first out of the gate because, again, XRP has just been extremely sought after. The demand around XRP has been skyrocketing. I would say that XRP this cycle so far has become a center stage candidate for adoption around market expansion, exposure, ETFs, even institutional adoption of XRP itself. We've been starting to see a lot of institutional clients coming out and speaking about XRP. So it just makes a lot of sense for XRP to have that, first mover advantage around altcoins getting an ETF. So, and remember what I said, the first altcoin to get an ETF, a spot ETF trading live, will be a massive catalyst for price action. But also remember why the ETFs are so important. Here we have from Brad Garlinghouse, XRP ETFs represent the transition from speculative retail trading to institutional adoption. This is precisely why XRP ETFs are essential. ETFs will be approved and trading soon. Check this out.
There's been an influx of XRP ETF filings, both in and out of the US. How do you view all of this? How do you view these filings?
Well, I think part of the transition from maybe more speculative retail into more institutional adoption and participation is the ETF step. Certainly, the Bitcoin ETF getting approved, the SEC was dragged kicking and screaming a little bit towards that outcome. But getting the Bitcoin ETF, I think, was a monumental event in terms of expanding the ability for others to participate, particularly institutional investors. So to me, I think I said then publicly that if people would ask me, is there going to be an XRP ETF? And I just look, it's inevitable that there will be an XRP ETF. And now I think I actually don't even know. I think there's 4 or 5 different filings here in the US. I know of at least one in Europe. And, I think it's great. I think it's, again, not surprising. I certainly hope that we'll see some of those approved soon. And we'll see them trading so others can participate in the ecosystem that otherwise might not be able to because they don't want to custody crypto themselves or other reasons that may exist. But I'm excited for sure, and I think it's a great sign not just for XRP, but I think it's a great sign for crypto broadly. I will say, and I think many people know this.
Look, I'm totally on board with Brad here, and don't forget, he was the guy who originally called XRP ETFs going live in the second half of this year. And boom, here we are. The timeline's just clicking into place perfectly with September and October. Standard Chartered's been talking about Q3 too. So honestly, at this point, pretty much everyone's agreeing we'll see XRP ETFs trading sometime around that September, October window. Plus, the market always seems to heat up heading into fall. It just makes sense when you look at crypto's monthly patterns over the years. We'll have to sit tight and see what happens, but here's the thing I keep coming back to with XRP. It's all about that market exposure these ETFs are going to bring. I mean, there are so many XRP ETF filings out there right now, and honestly, it makes total sense. You don't need to be some crypto guru or Wall Street expert to see that XRP has been absolutely crushing it this cycle. We're talking 400% gains over the past year. It's basically outperformed almost everything else in the top 100. Look, here's the thing. You don't need to be some Wall Street wizard to see what's happening here. We're talking about a 400% jump in just 12 months. That's absolutely massive. If you're sitting on XRP right now, this has got to feel pretty incredible. And if you're one of those big institutional players thinking about launching an XRP ETF, man, you're probably on the edge of your seat waiting for the perfect moment to pull that trigger. You know there's serious money to be made once that green light hits. That's exactly why I've been saying BlackRock's going to jump in the moment these things start going live. They're not going to miss out on this opportunity. Anyway, I really hope you found this helpful. If you did, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you don't miss any of the free content coming your way. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.